Hey everybody. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. 1 week before our wedding, I, 34 female, discovered my fiancé, 30 male, plans to meet up with an old fling. I've been with my partner 4 years and we are getting married this weekend. We have good communication skills and trust and fidelity have never been an issue in our relationship, nor has jealousy. We don't really discuss past partners very much, but we are aware of important prior relationships and generally can discuss these comfortably. When my partner was young, 22, he met an older married woman while in a foreign country together and they had a fling. I know this relationship was important to his personal story. Upon returning from the foreign country, they met up once at her place when her husband wasn't home, fooled around, and as far as I understand, that's the last time they saw each other. He told me that one time she seemed to suggest that she would have left her husband to be with him, and that was the point he knew he was in over his head and at risk of ruining her life, as he did not reciprocate that level of feeling. The relationship would have been about 8 years ago now. I'm not a heavy snooper, but we do share a lot of devices and sometimes I'm not proud of it, but I do snoop lightly just out of curiosity sometimes. I have seen that over the years, she sends him the occasional LinkedIn message, he's not on Facebook, to say hello, update him on her life, etc. These are only a couple of times a year. They're not lavish or strange messages, and notably, he only responded once with something nice about remembering their trip together, and that was before he met me. Since then, he has not responded to her handful of brief check-ins. We're in the same towns, etc. However, I had to go in his email a couple of weeks ago for something pertaining to the wedding organization, and I saw she had messaged him again, that she would be in our town in a few weeks, and that she wanted to take him out on an evening or time a few weeks from now. I didn't think much of it. Certainly, she doesn't know he's getting married. It's not like they have been messaging. And as my partner is honestly a little bit thoughtless about replying to messages, I expected he'd just ignore her. But it still weighed on my mind, as the country they traveled to or the trip he took came up in conversation with friends just a few nights ago, and I thought he might take the opportunity to say, "Haha, funny enough, I just heard from her," or something like that. As weeks passed with no mention of her invitation, I logged into his LinkedIn just to assure he had not replied or anything to her, and in fact he had, saying very simply that he would love to meet and she should name the place. Now, I trust him. I don't believe he has never given the faintest indication that he carries a torch for this woman, whom he hasn't spoken to in years. His more serious relationship with another woman was right before me, and I don't exactly believe he plans to step out and cheat on me. We've not really had any problems lately. He has seemed happy as normal, etc. I know I've already been crazy by snooping, and that I'd be crazier still to get upset so prematurely. The most likely scenario is that there is no inherent reason why he can't have a dinner with a person from his past. Maybe close an emotional loop. Tell her about how well his life turned out since then, and about his marriage. I am assuming actually that he probably does plan to disclose and discuss it with me. For example, how would you feel if I had dinner with X? And that he is correctly waiting until after the wedding to ask me about the proposed meeting is after the wedding, as it would be weird to ask it just a few days before our wedding. But I can't help but have feelings come up. I'm annoyed that she contacted him. I definitely have a richer sexual history with men than my partner has with women, and I never really tried to get back across a dinner table with people from close to a decade ago. Like, girl, really? Why does she keep contacting him? And what would be the objective of this dinner? And I can't imagine asking him, "Is it okay if the older man who swept me off my feet when I was young comes to our town and takes me out?" I know we haven't really hung out or spoken with him since the last time we almost boned in his wife's bed while she was gone, but I just want to know how he's doing these days. I don't want to be an insane spying girlfriend who doesn't let my partner hang out with other women, friends, etc., just because they have history. But up until now, we don't have the kind of relationship where we hang out with our ex-lovers. I'm trying to manage my feelings on my own, as I should not have snooped and I should have let him discuss this with me. I imagine the reason he has concealed it is he's worried I'll leap to conclusions or be neurotic, as you can see that I'm being. Nope, just gonna be neurotic in private on Reddit. My plan right now is to just wait till he brings it up and then share what I've said to you here. I trust him and I'm not against it, but what might she be expecting? How would he feel if I had a similar meeting with men from my past? Are there going to be future meetings with this person? She doesn't live in our country. Or is this a one-time thing, etc.? So I guess my question is, how would you manage this? Should I just fess up that I snooped so we can discuss it right now rather than have it overhanging the wedding? Is it fair if I would like to hear what's the point of him meeting up with this woman who, despite being married and now with a baby, still has not forgotten him after 8 years? Is it fair to feel a little hurt that in the week before our wedding he was able to send her a "yes, sure, let's meet" message without wanting to run it by me first? He couldn't include "I'm getting married this weekend" in the reply to at least set her expectations? As I said, he's a bit thoughtless about text messages and things like that, so I'm trying not to prematurely be mad at him or read things in, but I don't know what to think. Alright, now let's move on for the update. I decided to fess up to the snooping and ask him about what I found. I said something like, "Hey, I know this is going to sound crazy for a couple of reasons, and I'm sorry, but were you planning to meet up with blank after the wedding?" We ended up having a long and very honest conversation, during which he said that because he knew the meeting would be harmless and the complicated situation would have made me needlessly upset, he replied without discussing it with me. Further conversation, though, revealed he really had not thought this through very well. He did not really have an answer for, "When were you planning to tell me?" And when I asked, "Would you have pretended to be doing something else, gone to dinner with her, and lied to me about it?" He confessed that he did not know. He was not defensive, did not try any of the "I was just waiting to discuss it" BS, did not need prompting to disclose that he had planned to meet her, didn't try to lie or diminish anything. The thing I really need to stress here is that at no point, including now, do I believe his motive for meeting her was that he still had feelings or wanted to rekindle an affair. Had he gone to dinner with her, I do not believe anything physical would have happened. The problems are A, going behind my back and possibly planning to lie, and B, that this woman remains in a weird and complicated kind of emotional denial, and he has some kind of people-pleasing instinct that for some reason made it easier and more important to him to acquiesce to her than to do the hard work of talking with me. According to his explanation, the woman maintained a great deal of guilt after her affair, and the only way she could deal with what she had done was if they stayed friends, because then it would have been a friendship instead of an affair. Yet, I brought up the fact that since the affair, the one friends meeting they did have resulted in them fooling around, and the friendship she longed for had never in fact materialized. It seemed he believed that meeting up with her as a married man would finally create a sense of closure on the affair for her. But when I pressed him on this, why is closure for her more valuable to you than honesty with me? Are you going to start our marriage lying to me to avoid my feelings so that you can take care of another woman's? Why did you not let her know with your reply about your upcoming wedding to frame things for her? Supposing you have a nice friendly dinner, what is next? Further contact, further meetings, or no? How do you know she believes in this friendship versus a manipulative denial that allows her to keep contact with you? He did not argue or defend, but seemed to immediately realize the wish for a meeting made no sense and that he had done the wrong thing. Like, what kind of logic is that? The way for me to heal from my affair is to keep meetings with my partner from 8 years ago as friends so we can pretend it never happened. He says he fully thought they would have had a proper above-board catch-up, which would have made her feel better about things, but he also agreed that it came apart as soon as one looked at it, and that just taking the path of least resistance had been easier for him than trying to unpack this. I told him that had it not been for the imminent wedding, I would have let the meeting come and go, and he would have returned home to me in my packed bags. I reminded him I had always been very reasonable about friendships with women, exes, etc., and that if he'd come to me confessing that he hoped to close the loop on an element of his past, I would have been supportive, so long as the boundaries were reasonable, and that he communicated with me about what had been discussed. I reminded him that he would never be in this position with me as I don't continue to meet up with men I've slept with, and that he had better think through what led him to go behind my back in this way. As for the snooping, I apologized and admitted it was wrong for me to dig, but he was not bothered about it at all. He said he thought I had a right to pursue the issue when I saw the message and that he might have done the same. In the end, he said he was glad I took the initiative on this now, because this confrontation forced him to unpack something that was messy but relatively unimportant to him once I asked him to examine it. I was satisfied with the way the conversation went, in that he acknowledged all my emotions were fair and that he had done something wrong that could have potentially had serious consequences. Again, I think this would be a slightly different post if I believed for 1 second he still had feelings, physical or otherwise, towards her, but I think it's more he's kind of emotionally young, dislikes upsetting others, and chose the route that would have caused him the least discomfort. He says he has realized from our talk it would be stupid, pointless, and misleading to meet up with her. I've encouraged him to think it over, plan out the communication strategy with both her and me better, and that I still would not stop him going so long as whatever he thought he could resolve was carried out in a sensible, truthful, and above-board manner without avoiding communicating anything to her or me. He probably decided not to go, but I am not having the "I went crazy jealous and told him who he could and couldn't talk to" narrative around this, or OP stopped me from resolving things, or whatever. It would probably set a better path for future if he did go, and we proved as a couple we can navigate situations like these in a communicative and adult manner, and that no artificial cutoffs of people who have been important in our lives have to happen without a dialogue. Now, this doesn't mean I'm happy with things. In a way, it was a bit worse than I thought. I figured that he was going to talk it over with me, but wanted to wait until better timing after the wedding. But in fact, he confessed he hadn't necessarily thought through how to handle me in the situation. I told him I found this disappointing and a violation of trust, and he agreed that it was. I told him I might need a little space to get over the fact of him thoughtlessly planning to meet an old fling during the week of my wedding, and he said he would understand. I'm sad and disappointed that if I hadn't snooped, and if Reddit hadn't encouraged me not to wait, he would have even considered lying to me, going behind my back, and putting the apparent needs of a relatively unimportant, obviously messed up in the head ex before respect for me. He knows this is a big F-up. But still, given the fact we had not had any other remotely gray area incidents with trust, jealousy, or exes in our past, and how honest and fair he was when confronted, I'm still not having second thoughts about the wedding. I think he has learned from this, is genuinely sorry, and that such a thing will not happen again. How serious do you think this is, given I A, trust that explicit cheating was not his motive, the meeting would have been harmless in his view, and that he really was just kind of being a thoughtless people pleaser, and B, he completely heard, understood, and acknowledged all my concerns, made apologies, and promised to do better in a way that satisfied me for now, and C, we have never had anything like this come up before. Alright, the OP is asking for how she did. Let's look into the comments and see what they think. Chirpy Derp starts us off. I think that in light of the fact you have a wedding in a few days, I would just bring it up lightly. I fear you're going to spend your whole wedding day thinking and doubting instead of enjoying marrying your significant other. Tell him you are in the inbox for wedding stuff and happen to see her email and his reply. Keep it light and non-accusatory, and ask if he is actually going to meet her. You could probably even throw out there that with the wedding coming up, you're feeling particularly sensitive to this and just wanted to hear from him why he's going, but that you do really trust him. Just give him a chance to explain his side. It sounds like you have a fantastic relationship with no reason to not trust him, so I'm optimistic there's a logical and satisfying reason for it. Vesper Lindy has the next comment. When my husband and I were engaged, we took marriage counseling with the pastor who would be marrying us. At the tail end of our final session together, the pastor closed with a suggestion that I think is very appropriate given your situation. He urged us to think hard for a moment about burning questions my husband and I had for one another, any admissions, any revelations, anything that either of us had been scared to unload or unsure about sharing, or perhaps feeling guilty about throughout our 4-year courtship. That it was time to clear the air right then, and not at some inopportune moment after we'd already sealed the deal. So with that lingering in our minds, my husband and I walked to our car, sat in the parking lot, and just talked. A lot. We both felt more confident in one another and our relationship after that discussion, and that honesty has carried seamlessly into our marriage. Talk to him about your concerns and do it now, before you wed, and assuming it goes well, congratulations! The OP's first response? Thank you. That's reassuring to hear, as it's a very sensible plan. I'm actually worried about revealing that I've gotten paranoid and snooped in his email so close to the wedding. I don't want him to feel violated or like I mistrust him or something. I think my current plan is to wait a day or two and find out if, as you say, there's a risk of this preoccupying me so much it interferes with the wedding. If yes, then maybe I could, as you suggest, bring it up as, hey, I was feeling especially delicate, so I looked closely at this. Can we talk about it? Rather than in an accusatory manner. A perverse part of me also kind of wants to wait and see what he does. I'm curious about how he plans to treat me in this situation and what he wants to say. I guess it's just a question of whether I really can shelve this in the back of my mind until the appointed day comes and see how he plans to put it to me. What I can't work out is if it's fair for me to want/expect him to put an end cap on this contact, to say goodbye, etc. I have an inherent dislike for the "now we're friends though" thing that lovers pretend to do. I have been able to go back to being friends with friends who I slept with if we were friends first. But I don't really buy that someone you have only ever really known as a sex partner is suddenly just a friend as soon as one of you starts dating someone. The sex and the memories are the main thing you had in common. Then again, I definitely have a few, not close, friends that I have history with that I would be aghast for him to feel jealous about, as it's so over. So while I kind of wish this woman would move on and leave my partner alone, my instinct tells me that I need to accept that I simply can't control that kind of thing, and that attempting to will just make me a villain / make him less likely to share anything with me. Chirpyderp has a comment again. With situations like this, I think how a person deals with an ex all depends on their current relationship with partner. You don't seem like a crazy jealous type, and are by all accounts very reasonable. The fact that it's raising your heckles should mean something to him. If you're uncomfortable with this woman contacting him, then you should be able to voice that concern, and he will hopefully respond in kind by cutting her off. You're going to be his wife, and your opinion should matter. My significant other has a woman who he had an emotional affair with when he was married the first time. She still contacts him, and I find myself snooping occasionally to see. It has been 6 years since we got together, and she still emails him. Not once have I seen a response. My God, you think she'd get the hint. Good luck, OP. You know your relationship better than anyone on Reddit, and I'm sure you'll figure out the best way to handle this with your significant other. And congrats on your upcoming wedding. And here the OP is going to close us out. Does your significant other know about your snooping? I never really do any digging, as I have no reason to. So it's not like I'm going crazy deep into all of his correspondences, but again, we don't really lock anything away from each other, so I do relatively often find myself glancing at threads in his inbox, Twitter DMs, things like that. I've analyzed the impulse, and I think it's honestly just comes from curiosity, wanting to know what the person is like in the eyes of others, how others treat him, etc. I remind myself that he could do the same with me, and I'd have nothing he couldn't see, but I do kind of morally struggle with it. I did have to enter his LinkedIn password. I guessed it. It's the same as our other passwords, like Netflix, etc., to see the full thread that was started in his inbox by her message, and I feel like that would be a little tough though to explain. But yeah, I guess it's the same kind of thing where, what if you found out he'd finally replied to this girl? Would you try to dig for the full discussion?